My name is Julia. Recently, I've been constantly troubled by static electricity that makes my hair stick to my face all the time. I end up looking like the protagonist from a scary movie like The Ring or some haunted house story, and I'm a 38-year-old woman wanting to do something about it. I know it's probably not good that I'm always wearing clothes made of fleece material. But it's just become so cold so suddenly. I've entirely adopted an Eskimo style. Today, I want to share a certain winter experience of mine. Please lend me your ears. I've had a childhood friend whom I've grown up with since I was 4. Her name was Emily. Ever since her family moved next door when I was 4, not only did we kids become friends, but our parents did too, as they were of the same age. We naturally became close like family. Emily was reserved and mature when we were young. However, as we approached late elementary school, her shy personality gradually began to change. Frankly speaking, she was so adorable that it was astonishing even from my perspective as her friend. My mom even jokingly suggested to her mom that she could become a child actress. When Emily was young, being called cute didn't contribute to her self-confidence. However, by late elementary school, she was a proper little lady despite being a child. She began to understand bit by bit how her cuteness could be a weapon. Indeed, Emily realized that she was cute. Other girls flocked around her like followers. Her hairstyle became trendy, and everyone started wearing the same hairbands. There were a lot of Emily wannabes popping up everywhere. Within our class, she was probably as popular as Britney Spears was at her peak. As she continued to be fawned over, Emily gradually transformed into a more selfish character. She became quite upset if she wasn't the first in games when we were playing, and there were times when she would slightly bully her friends. Looking back now, it wasn't particularly unusual for kids to act this way. But being of the same age, it was quite a hassle. When we moved on to middle school, Emily's cuteness was further refined. She grew taller and looked so dazzling in her school uniform that it seemed like she was wearing a different one from the rest of us. In comparison, I was a petite girl who was just getting by in my uniform. Naturally, Emily became part of the group of pretty girls and was among the upper ranks in our class's social hierarchy. By this point, even the boys who used to laugh at Emily in elementary school, saying, "Everyone is copying your style, it's so lame," started changing their tone and sweet-talking her with phrases like, "Hey Emily." This was an age where each of us began to be conscious of the opposite sex. She rode this wave brilliantly and even became known as the after-school sweetheart. Why was she called the after-school sweetheart? Because she was always receiving confessions in the school backyard after classes. She was spotted so often that she eventually got this nickname. Her pampered attitude worsened in proportion to how much she was adored. She would look down upon and laugh at others who didn't seem to be popular. Well, most of the upper social echelons had that kind of atmosphere, but Emily was always the one to lead in such behavior. At that time, there was a weird notion that it was cool to look down on those who didn't stand out. On the other hand, I was more into comics and video games than fashion or boys, so I was living a completely different life with friends who shared the same hobbies. However, Emily never looked down upon me or treated me poorly. No matter how petite I was or how geeky my hobbies were, she would always carelessly come to me for love advice, saying, "Julia, listen to this." Emily was the only one who did that. She never looked down on my friends either. So, while there were times when I felt upset about her past attitudes towards others, I never got to the point of disliking her. This is how we spent our serene middle school years, eventually moving on to different high schools and universities. Having left the state to go to college, I had quite the uproar, a can of hard seltzer in hand, when I reunited with Emily. Even when we met after a long time, we were still good friends, a privilege I believed was unique to childhood friends. The issue arose about a decade ago. At the time, after graduating from college, I returned to my hometown and was working for a local company. It was when I introduced my doctor boyfriend, Ken, whom I met through a mutual friend, to my parents to get their approval for us to live together. I bumped into Emily at the entrance of my house. To her question, "Oh, could this be Julia's boyfriend?" I bashfully answered, "Yeah." After scrutinizing Ken, Emily left with a smile, saying, "I hadn't heard. Introduce him to me next time." That night, I got a call from Emily, and it was decided that I would introduce Ken to her. Since Ken and I were living together with the prospect of getting married, I thought it would be good to introduce him to Emily, my childhood friend. So, I decided to get Ken and Emily together as soon as possible. This happened when the three of us gathered at a cafe at a later date. When Ken got up from his seat, Emily said, "This is bad." When I asked her, "What's wrong?" with a surprised look on my face, she came out with, "I might have fallen for Ken." I thought it was a joke, but she was looking at Ken with such dreamy eyes that it seemed as though she was seeing hearts. While I was in distress, she laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry. I won't steal someone's boyfriend. It's the same feeling as admiring an idol." But I didn't feel at ease and didn't leave my seat after that. I was afraid of what would happen if they were left alone. After a while, I happened to see Emily and Ken walking arm in arm in the city. Neither Ken nor Emily had told me that they were going out together. Were they having an affair? Or could they be planning a surprise for me? As I vacillated between the worst-case scenario and hopeful thoughts, I found myself sprinting to catch up with them. Out of breath, the only thing I could say when I finally caught up with them was, "Why are you two together?" I remember being stared at in surprise by people around me. Emily, sticking out her tongue, saying, "You found us," and Ken, going pale. When I confronted them, it turned out that this was their first date, and it seems that Emily had asked Ken for his contact information when I went to the bathroom the first time the three of us met. It was right around the time I arrived at the store, before I was told I might have fallen for him. Emily, who had fallen in love with Ken in what was close to love at first sight, got his contact information with the idea of just as friends, and as they talked, she fell for him. Ken, too, responded with, "If there's anything you're worried about, let's talk about it," and they exchanged contact information. At that time, he was planning to consult with her about how to propose to me in a way that would make me happy. But Emily had her sights set on Ken, and it wasn't a proper consultation. She gradually made her moves, and given that she's quite a cutie, Ken wasn't entirely averse to being told he was loved. And so, Ken fell right into her trap. Ken pleaded with me, saying, "It was the first and last mistake. I won't ever do something like this again," but I couldn't forgive him for just going on a date. As for Emily, she was whispering to Ken, "Why not just date me from now on?" Emily was a childhood friend I held dear, and I was even thinking of marrying my beloved boyfriend. After suffering the ultimate betrayal, I couldn't bear to see either of their faces anymore. I chose to cut ties with Emily right there and then, and also decided to break up with Ken. 9 months after that, I got a text from a middle school classmate about a reunion for the members of our 8th grade class. In 8th grade, Emily and I were in different classes. Thinking I could have fun because of this, I decided to participate, but on the day, I was caught off guard. "Our class idol, Emily, is coming," said the class clown, who had invited her even though she had been in a different class. Those who were in the same club as her or were in the same class as her in 7th or 9th grade were thrilled about this unexpected guest, but I couldn't share their joy. Despite this, everyone said, "Oh, long time no see, childhood friend duo. Sit next to each other," and they made Emily and I sit together. Of course, they don't know about everything that's happened, so it can't be helped. To be honest, I felt like saying, "I cut ties with her because she stole my boyfriend, so please keep her away from me." But I didn't want to rain on the parade of people who knew nothing about it, so I held back. In the end, I spent the reunion, which I had been looking forward to, with a frown, with my detested childhood friend sitting next to me. "What do you do for work now, Julia?" "Me? I'm a secretary at a local company." "Really? But didn't you go to college in New York? You'd probably take home more if you worked there, right?" "Well, yes, but I'm an only child and I have to take care of my parents, so I decided to set up my life close to them." As I was having this conversation with an old friend, Emily suddenly interrupted. "What? So that's why you're dressed so shabbily? No wonder you seem so poor." Needless to say, a vein popped on my temple when Emily, whom I was supposed to have cut ties with, snidely commented as if nothing had happened. The old friend turned pale as if to say, "Wow, that's harsh," while looking at Emily. Of course, I decided to ignore Emily. Sensing the uncomfortable atmosphere, the old friend changed the topic. "So, Emily, what about you?" "Me? I also work for a local company, but I'm in sales, so I'm making pretty good money. I also have a boyfriend who says he wants to marry me, so I guess I'm set for life." "Huh? A boyfriend? Who is he? Do you have a picture or something?" Our old friend quickly responded to Emily's words. They knew nothing, so they had no choice. As much as I was over it, it was an unbearable topic for me. Emily, aware of this, couldn't hide her glee, saying, "Oh really?" She showed an old friend a picture stored on her phone. "Wow, classic Emily. Your boyfriend is hot. What does he do?" "Really? Thanks. He's a doctor. Makes over $100,000 a year, so I plan to quit my job when we get married." "Oh, wow. That's a dream life for every woman at least once, right?" "Right. Oh, what about you, Julia? Don't have a boyfriend?" Turning the conversation back to me, Emily was grinning, holding the picture of Ken, the lover she stole from me. "Oh right, Julia, you don't have a boyfriend, do you?" The old friend also tossed the question to me as if remembering something. It seemed to our old friend, who thought that the awkwardness was due to her slip of the tongue, that the atmosphere had calmed down from earlier. If I choose to ignore, it's the old friend who would feel uncomfortable. Such a festive gathering. It would be a shame to ruin this reunion of our first class. Reluctantly, I smiled and said, "No, I don't." "Huh? Aren't you worried about having kids if you don't get married soon? Still single?" Emily pounced on the chance to ask. Our old friend turned pale again. "Poor thing, being single and poor. Oh, I'm so glad I snagged a boyfriend who earns $100,000. Hearing stories like this, I realize how blessed and victorious I am." "Oh, so I'm a loser and unfortunate, am I?" Looking at her condescending and triumphant attitude, it's clear she still doesn't know anything. I was about to say, "that man," but swallowed my words. No, let's keep quiet out of pity. She should stay in her temporary happiness, for all I care. In the end, I left the reunion having been spoken down to all day. But I wasn't envious at all of everything Emily bragged about, so I didn't feel bitter. About 2 years passed since then. To my surprise, Emily suddenly showed up at my parents' house. "What can I do for you?" I asked, to which she shouted back at me in a furious tone, "Give me back my money." I had no recollection of borrowing money from her, so I had no idea what she was talking about. "Hold on a sec. What money? I don't remember borrowing anything from you. Don't play dumb. The $600,000 you took from Ken." "Huh? Ken gave me money? Did he?" I was completely confused. According to Emily, just as they were about to get married, Ken told her he had debts. Apparently, he blamed the debt on the reckless spending I did while we were dating. Because of that debt, he couldn't marry Emily. Hold on. An average woman's reckless spending wouldn't cause a debt of $600,000. If I had been indulging in luxury enough to get someone in debt, I should be covered head to toe in designer brands. I see. I figured it out. It seems Emily still doesn't know anything. Out of the kindness of my heart, being her childhood friend, I decided to enlighten her. "Do you really think that debt was because of my reckless spending?" "Ken himself said it. There can't be any other reason. It's your fault I can't get married. Stop playing around." "Hey, hasn't Ken been working a lot of night shifts recently?" "Huh? Why should that matter to you? Even if it's true, so what?" "Well, it's not my business after all." Sorry. Never mind. Time for you to head home." With my nonchalant dismissal, she muttered, "Wah," obviously puzzled. "Arg. This is so frustrating. His night shifts are piling up. What's that about? Just because he's reliable, they think it's okay to keep him busy," Emily exclaimed, fuming with irritation. A smirk spread across my face at her words. "And what if I told you that he is reliable not to the doctors, but to the favorite girl at the club and the club manager?" "What? Huh? What are you talking about?" "That's to say, it's not the doctors who are looking forward to Ken's presence every night, but rather the club managers and Ken's favorite girl there, wondering how much he will spend at the club." "What? What does that mean? Are you implying he's been going to a club instead of working night shifts?" Bingo. As I confirmed her suspicions, Emily's face turned a furious shade of red. "Stop spreading lies just because you're jealous he chose me over you," she lashed out. Sadly for Emily, there was no lie in what I was saying. Ken, being a doctor, often found himself being taken to nightclubs as a form of stress relief by his peers and superiors. This was the case even when he and I were together. Well, I suppose his way of having fun was a reflection of his financial status. But it was just them drinking with girls, so I didn't really think much of it. For instance, if you asked me if I'd fall for a bartender at a bar that I frequented, I'd wake up to the reality saying, well, it's just their job after all. I know that Ken isn't that naive, and in fact, he did set clear boundaries. Apparently, there was a time when Ken visited my friend's bar. I heard that he barely made any physical contact because he said, "I have a girlfriend." So, I wasn't worried about him cheating on me at the club, or becoming too attached to one of the girls. Just as some people buy lottery tickets for the thrill of it even if they hate gambling, I figured it's okay to have a little fun as long as you don't get too involved. However, after we broke up, I heard a story from the acquaintance who introduced me to Ken. He had a new girlfriend who was possessive. It was about Emily. She demanded frequent contact even during work hours, and insisted that they spend their days off together. During the day, he had to deal with patients, subordinates, and colleagues at work, and at home, he was bound by his live-in girlfriend. He wasn't allowed any time to himself, and probably never got a mental break. But he couldn't go to strip clubs or bars to make a ruckus with his colleagues like he used to. He couldn't let off steam. Yet, he was often urged by those around him, "Don't be a party pooper, let's go." Ken himself was dying to go. He was just being considerate and refusing because of Emily. But it's understandable that if the stress reaches its limit, he'd end up visiting the club saying, just for today. There's absolutely no relief in Ken's life. And the strip club he visited after a long time gave him an incredible sense of liberation and enjoyment. From then on, Ken started spending even more time in nightclubs. While feeling guilty, the skilled talkers at the club who affirmed him became a source of comfort for Ken, and he ended up falling for one of them. Her existence is the reason why Ken, who earns $100,000 a year, ended up in debt in a short period of time. When I told Emily everything, she was shaking like a leaf.
No way! That can't be! We're supposed to get married. And of course I believe Ken, who promised me a future, rather than you, who broke off the relationship. Are you stupid?
Emily didn't change her stance that I was the bad guy who ripped off money. That's a tough story. Ken is just a guy I've been dating for a few years, but I've known you since we were kids, even though we broke off the relationship.
Okay, don't believe me if you don't want to. It's not gonna bother me. You can't expect me to believe this. It's such an obvious tall tale. Alright, I get it. But look at this,
I said, showing her a particular video.
It's obviously Ken, but if you're going to be that way, you don't have to believe it. Huh?
Emily's voice raised in surprise as the video played. No surprise there. The video featured a plastered and jovial Ken, alongside a girl with extravagant curls. The lighting was dim, with notable purple lights. It was unmistakably a scene from some sort of club. The girl looked rather uncomfortable with the camera in her face, probably annoyed at being filmed. However, Ken was too drunk to even notice her discomfort, his face all puffed up and silly. Considering the cameraman was chuckling throughout, it's a wonder they didn't get thrown out. I guess they must have been spending a lot. Just goes to show why he's in debt. I received this video from a mutual friend who introduced me to Ken.
I heard he's really going off the rails recently. You dodged a bullet breaking up with him, he said.
This friend happens to be a med school graduate. Both the cameraman and Ken are his friends, and he seemed to have received this video as some kind of joke. That's how it ended up with me. Man, it's scary how there are cameras everywhere these days.
I don't think his debt is the reason he can't get married. With his income, he should be able to pay it off if he really tried. Maybe the real reason is that he's taken a liking to this girl?
When I gave Emily a sly grin and said that, she screamed no way, with teary eyes.
But, he said he was going to marry me. I'm already past 30, I need to get married soon. This can't be happening. Well, if you stop worrying about income and stuff, there's plenty of other men out there, right? You're a catch, Emily. Shut up. There's no way I would settle for a man beneath my level.
That's why high-level men find low-level reasons to avoid marrying you.
Huh?
When Emily looked puzzled, I said, if you don't raise your standards in all aspects, you'll keep ending up in the same situation, regardless of who you're with.
Shut up. What would a poor, single woman like you know? I've worked my way up to this point with marriage as my goal. You don't understand my struggles.
She's been bossy and demanding ever since she stole Ken from me. I guess some people never change. Okay, I get it. Honestly, I couldn't care less. I'm getting married, so I don't care about old boyfriends or being single. Now, I really need to head over to my boyfriend's place. Can you leave already? I just came here to pack up for moving. It's my boyfriend's birthday today, and I need to get back and cook him a feast. When I said that with a stern face and waving her off, Emily screamed, "What?" Then, from next door, Emily's mother came out saying, "I thought I recognized that voice. Emily, what are you up to?" Emily is currently living with Ken after leaving her parents' house. I guess she didn't inform them that she was coming here today.
Mrs. Johnson, Emily took my ex-boyfriend and then mistakenly thought that I was the one who racked up his debt. Now, she's demanding me to pay it back.
When I cried out like that, Emily's face went pale as a ghost.
What are you talking about? Wah. Emily, is this true? What did you do to Julia? Come here right now. I need to hear this.
Emily, who was about to argue with me, seemed to be utterly powerless against her mother. She didn't even get a chance to defend herself before her mother dragged her back inside. Afterwards, it goes without saying that we could hear her mother's furious scolding from Emily's house. Later, after I got back to my boyfriend's place, my mom told me Emily's mom brought her over to apologize. Apparently, Emily was severely scolded, her eyes all swollen from crying. My mom had no idea about what happened between Ken, Emily, and me, so she was quite surprised the whole time. Well, Emily's mom is a former karate champion, so it's really scary when she gets angry. I myself have had my share of scolding from her for some petty mischief when I was little, and I remember crying and regretting it. After this, Emily was told by her parents, "We won't approve of your marriage to a man who easily changes women," and she ended up breaking up with Ken. In the end, she was told by her mother to straighten up her act, and she was stripped of everything, from her savings to her clothes. She was also told that the money she earned from work, except for the rent, utilities, and living expenses determined by her mother, would have to go back to her family home for the next 10 years. She wasn't allowed to go back to her parents' house for the time being, and was set up in an apartment with no bath, shared toilet, and was about 30 years old with a dark history, and was told to live there for a while to cool off. A classmate who happened to see Emily said, "She used to be so cute, but she looked like a different person with heavy bags under her eyes. Her mother is keeping an eye on her regularly, so she won't be able to do anything bad." Given the circumstances, even a cute girl like Emily can't even think about dating. Just because she took my boyfriend, she seems to have distanced herself from any new encounters. Meanwhile, I married my new boyfriend as planned and had a son. Cleaning up the front entrance every day when he comes home covered in mud is a bit of a hassle, but I also feel joy in his daily growth. If I said I never thought about what would have happened if I had married Ken, it would be a lie, but I think I made the right choice with this life. Being a doctor's wife, having home parties regularly, it seemed very stiff, you know? I'm now a wife of a regular businessman, but for me, the ordinary is just right and very calming. Actually, I realized as an adult that being ordinary is also hard. I pray that our family can continue to be ordinary.